You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Tour de France, brought to you by Iwoka, flexible loans built for small businesses. iwoka.co.uk. Today we're at Mont Aigoual.
Where are we, Lionel, François? Lionel.
Well, we've been passing the buck here. Even François had to look up how you say the name of the town we're in, Meyrueis, which features in Tim Krabbe's book,
That's where it starts,
The Rider.
Yeah. The race starts here. He gets changed on this very street.
You're being plagued by wasps. It's late summer wasp season, isn't it? There's a lot of wasps around. Yeah. We're outside quite a busy restaurant.
Appropriate for a race being dominated by Jumbo-Visma.
Absolutely.
And a lot of wasps swarming around the front of the peloton as well.
And unfortunately for you, I ordered a glass of rosé, and wasps seem to like it very much indeed.
At one point today, it looked as if only teams in yellow and black were allowed to lead the peloton until the Ineos Grenadiers took over. But we'll talk about the race. We should mention this beautiful place that we're in after a long but stunning drive today through, as you were telling us, François, the least populated part of France.
It is, yeah. I mean, we can I reveal the old truth? I mean, that we got lost. I mean, people who know about Montpellier and driving around Montpellier know that it's very, very easy to miss a turn and then to have to drive for 50 km before finding your way back where you were planning to go in the first place. But then, when you go beyond Montpellier, in what is called Le Haut-Hérault, Upper Hérault, this is stunning views, stunning landscapes, and that's what we drove through to get close to Mont Aigoual and to get to Meyrueis. And we left Hérault, that's the name of the department around Montpellier, to get into Lozère, which is the least populated department in France, and less populated, but lots of crowds actually today on the roads.
Indeed. Well, I'll take responsibility for the failure of navigation because I skipped ahead a step and changed the destination in the sat-nav before we'd come off the motorway at the right junction. Sorry, Richard. You went very quiet. I thought you were going to get cross about that. But
I was internalising my frustration.
I thought you were.
Lionel.
I thought you were. You were gripping the steering wheel a little bit harder than normal.
Yeah, my fingers are quite sore tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you for not making me feel worse, because I did feel like I felt like I'd caused the team leader to
be honest,
to crash.
I'd forgotten that I'd programmed in the turn off.
Wow.
So it was only later when I remembered that I got angry. No, I didn't. I wasn't angry. But it was just frustrating. It's always frustrating, when you take the wrong turn, because it's just unnecessary time in the car. Although
Indeed.
We did, as you say, François, the silver lining was that we did have a stunning drive, and we're looking forward to a bike ride here tomorrow because we're in the Cévennes and it is beautiful. As we heard in today's Kilometre Zero, which featured The Rider by Tim Krabbe, and just a brief word on that, one of our colleagues, William Folleringham, on Twitter, claimed that book, he doesn't like the book because it intellectualizes bike racing. And it doesn't. It does completely the opposite, as Tim Krabbe told us in the episode. So do have a listen.
Very true, Richard. Just on the getting lost, there were fewer tour vehicles to get on the wheel of, weren't there? The entourage is all smaller than we're used to, and so
which made the drive even more interesting, because we were actually, for the last 45 km, we were almost alone on a big plateau, very wooded in the same time, and gorgeous landscapes to be honest. Even if the roads were a little bit winding, and I could see that at times that Lionel was feeling a little bit
gorgeous.
Me too.
I'm absolutely stunning around here, and it does often produce very interesting stages. There was a stage in the Massif Central 2010 that was, again, a very strong breakaway went away, and that happened today, and that just it wasn't your average breakaway. It was a breakaway that really made the race fast and hard, and I don't think anybody had an easy day today.
No, certainly not. And the discombobulating Tour de France just got even more confusing, because today's stage felt very much like a transitional type stage you might get towards the end of the second week or the start of the third week between the big mountain ranges. But no, we're still in week one. It feels completely different to normal. But stage 6 from Le Teil to Mont Aigoual.
Yeah, so Le Teil means you have to give us the Le Teil of the etape now.
Very good, very good.
There you are.
So to Mont Aigoual, 191 kilometres, and an absolutely furious day's racing, as you say, Richard, largely because of the firepower in the 8-man break that went clear quite early on. Nicolas Roche of Sunweb, Jesus Herrada of Cofidis, Remy Cavagna of De Koning Quickstep, and the Olympic champion Greg Van Avermaet of CCC were shortly joined by Nielsen Paulus of EF Pro Cycling, Edvald Bosenhagen of NTT Pro Cycling, Daniel Oss of Bora Hansgrohe, and Alexey Lutsenko of Astana, the Kazakh champion and the eventual stage winner. The pace was absolutely searing. Nearly 52 kilometres were covered in the first hour, and that was because, I guess, the bunch didn't want the break to get out of hand and suddenly, put the GC standings at risk. There was a few, dangerous enough riders in there that could have moved up the overall standings. Eventually, they did ease up and just let it go. But it was fairly obvious from the midway point of the stage that someone from that leading group would win the stage. On the penultimate climb, we saw Nielsen Paulus go clear on his 24th birthday, but he was caught. And then Lutsenko went clear 4 kilometres from the top of the penultimate climb, around 17 in total from the finish. And it was a bit like the stage he won at the Vuelta in 2017, Richard. We were there at Alcocebre, where there was a similar long break all day and an uphill finish. This is Lutsenko's first Tour de France stage win, the first Kazakh stage win since Alexander Vinokurov in Revel, not too far away, 10 years ago. Jesus Herrada gave chase on the final climb, but the bottle of champagne that the team boss Cedric Vasseur keeps in the luggage compartment of the team bus to toast a Tour stage win will have to stay on ice a little while longer.
I think they had to chuck that out last year, didn't they?
Do you think it's gone past its sell-by date?
Well, François was telling us the other day how long we should keep wine and champagne.
Well, it depends. As I said, the ones you keep... well, if you really want to keep wine, don't keep it more than 20, 25 years maximum. And that's
approaching that for confidence. It'd be a shame if they pop it open and the cork doesn't actually pop off.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last Cofidis Tour de France stage win was Sylvain Chavanel in 2008. So it is a long wait. Other little things that happened today. There was a brief attack by Fabio Aru. There was a puncture at the bottom of the last bit of climbing for Tadej Pogačar, but he got back in. And, at the finish, it was Lutsenko ahead of Herrada, with Van Avermaet and Paulus the only other two riders from the break to stay away from the bunch. All the GC riders were together. Apart from Danny Martinez, who lost 8 seconds, Jacqueline and
Julien Alaphilippe attacked.
Absolutely. Alaphilippe nipped away at the end to take back one of the 20 seconds that he was penalised yesterday. Adam Yates of Mitchelton Scott still in the yellow jersey, and it feels like a genuine yellow jersey for Yates now. He inherited it in slightly unfortunate circumstances yesterday, but he is in yellow. Sam Bennett still in green. Benoit Cosnefroy.
Cosnefroy? You're right.
Doubting myself. Still in the polka dots for another day, and Tadej Pogačar in the white jersey. Tomorrow, as I said, it's a flat stage, should be a sprint, but it won't be easy because it's all through the tarn. It'll be up and down, it'll probably be quite warm, and it will feel a bit like one of those days in the second or third week.
You are listening to the Cycling Podcast, brought to you by Iwoka. Flexible loans built for small businesses. Join 50,000 customers taking on life's twists and turns and scaling new heights with Iwoka. If you run a small business, find out more at iwoka.co.uk. iwoca.co.uk.
Well, thanks to Iwaka, with the cycling podcast leading partner and sponsor on this Tour de France. I must say that personally, as a Frenchman, I discovered about Iwaka on this Tour de France with Lionel and Richard, and thanks to the cycling podcast. And really, I can say that in France, lots of small businesses and companies like mine actually, and other journalists around me have suffered quite a lot from the coronavirus crisis, and companies like Iwaka should be very, very useful for lots of people around me, from lots of people I know. So, well, if I can, make a suggestion to Iwaka, come over to France. I mean, forget about Brexit
and give me some money.
Yeah, and give me some money because, joke apart. I mean, it's true that there's been a really, lots of small businesses, especially.
You are a business owner, François.
Absolutely.
What business? You had a restaurant. You don't have a restaurant anymore.
Yeah, I had a restaurant. It folded. Well, not because of the coronavirus crisis, but it did just before. I own two bookshops actually, and I also I have my own little company. That's me. Like stringing for you guys, or writing books and stuff like this. So and lots of people around me, operating the same way, like freelancers. I've really struggled, especially in the world of journalism a little bit, but also entertainment and sports have been affected. So really, what companies like Iwaka are doing is actually very, very important for the survival, the simple survival of this type of company. So once again, joke apart, I think it's great that this sort of
this is the best endorsement Iwaka have ever had.
Well, if you want to find out more about Iwaka, go to iwaka.co.uk. It's iwoca.co.uk, and you can read on there about how they launched Iwaka Pay to help bridge the gap for small businesses struggling to get back into the swing of things after the coronavirus crisis hit. It meant that they could delay having to pay out for supplies and pay invoices, but collect money in more quickly. So it was a scheme that Iwaka set up to basically ease the flow of money and help small businesses out. And I gather that has helped a lot of businesses over the past few months.
Well, on to today's stage. Before we do get into that, actually, just a quick shout out on Monday's rest day. We'll be doing the first of our 2 press conferences during this Tour de France, and as ever, please send in your questions. If you can email them to contact@thecyclingpodcast.com. You can send an audio file. We prefer to hear your voice, so if you can send an audio file, that would be great. If not, type out your question, keep them brief, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. It's an opportunity to talk about maybe things that are happening away from the race as well. There have been other stories, other races going on. There's this UCI investigation into Remco Evenepoel and what happened at the Ile Lombardia. There's World Championships have been rearranged for Imola, and Annemiek van Vleuten has joined Movistar. So there are lots of stories that we aren't really covering while we're here, but we're happy to answer questions about them in our press conference. Please email us, contact@thecyclingpodcast.com. We're also doing an episode of Kilometre Zero with Seb Piquet, who is the voice of Race Radio, of course. And if you've got any questions for him about how his job works, what he does, and some of the technical things that go on in the race, please also email us, contact@thecyclingpodcast.com, and we will forward them on to Seb. Well, today was a great stage, a beautiful stage, a strong breakaway, and a deserving winner in Lutsenko. You spoke to his DS, I think, just after the finish, François.
I talked to Dimitri Fofonov, former rider, and who's been with Astana for a long while now. And, he told me that it told me it was actually a perfect day for Astana. What he said exactly was, we had great weather, great landscapes, the Kazakh champion in his Kazakh champion jersey, winning for a Kazakh team, on a great Tour de France stage with Alexander Vinokurov was there, and the leading sponsors of Astana were there apparently on the race today. So he said everything went according to plan. It was absolutely perfect. We had decided in the bus that we would be doing just that, send Alexey in the today. We had planned exactly when he should attack, and he did attack exactly when we said he would attack, and that's exactly what happened. So he said, what can I say? You know, sometimes everything clicks into place, and it was one of those days.
Well, sorry, François. Yeah. When we heard the names of the 8 riders in the break, you called it immediately and said, "Well, Lutsenko will win that." Very confidently. You know, it is kind of his ideal terrain, isn't it? And he pulled it off in almost sort of stage win by numbers. I mean, just a sort of logic test for him. He made all the right moves at all the right times, and no one could go with him.
In terms of his talent and the potential he had when he was under 23 world champion some time back, and Fofanov told me he could have won more. I mean, he has quite a good record, so let's face it. As you said, he won a stage in the Vuelta in 2017, I think. He also won the Tour of Oman twice. I think he beat Jesus Herrada actually in the Queen's stage of the Tour of Oman last year, which was kind of repeat, same type of riders. But what Fofanov told me is that he was a little bit all over the place before this season, and he was aging well. He'll be 28 in 4 days, I think, Alexey Lutsenko. And Fofanov told me, at a stage win like this, it will do a lot for his confidence, because now he's more, he listens to us much more than he did in the past. He's not so, a mad dog, we say in French, going all over the place. And Fofanov told me that actually he's a rider that's going to keep building up for the classics. He says that in his mind, Lutsenko is a guy who could win the Flanders, who could win Milan, San Remo, and in the future, that's what they're going to aim at for him. Be a big, real classics rider. Well, which he is already. We saw him at the front in the last Milan San Remo, but really they think he's come of age now, and he could soon win one of the monuments.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
That's PK, the voice of Radio Tour at the Tour de France, of course, to remind us to tell you that this episode is sponsored by the next generation Wattbike Atom. We're going to hear from Chris Scott, who has used the Wattbike to recover and regain strength after suffering a very serious accident.
So I was involved in a serious accident where I was on my motorbike and a car pulled out in front of me, and I hit the car at about 60 miles an hour, broke the majority of the bones in my body. Initially, I was given quite a short recovery time. However, that proved very quickly to be fairly untrue. So the accident was 9 months ago now, and I'm still not able to walk properly. I rely on crutches still to get around, but I can now put full weight through my leg, which is a good thing. So I've been wattbiking now for probably about 3 weeks. And just getting back into it, trying to build up the base level of fitness. At the moment, there's no question of me being able to get on a road bike. I might make some sort of funny YouTube video about me actually getting onto the Wattbike, because it's a bit of a mammoth task, organising your crutches to help you get on and swing a leg over the saddle. But it's completely risk-free. If my leg starts giving me pain, I can ease off and stop. And when I say hop off, I don't mean that. I mean slide off in an ungainly manner. I'm just so glad that we got one. It has just revolutionised my rehab. I've made a few programs myself on Zwift, just things that I know will keep the wattage low and constant, get to a level of difficulty that I'm comfortable with, and just spin away for as long as my body can take it, which is about 45 minutes at the moment.
Well, it was interesting to hear Chris talking about how he was able to get active a lot sooner in his recovery process thanks to the Wattbike, because he could do some indoor cycling in a very low risk environment, knowing that he could start with a very short session and build up, and he wouldn't be out on the road, if he could do half an hour on the Wattbike without leaving home, of course, and take his recovery steady in the early days. We'll hear more about Chris's recovery. Fortunately, he's quite well on the way to a full recovery now, and is starting to look ahead to some objectives on the bike. So we'll hear from Chris again tomorrow. The next generation Wattbike Atom is available to buy from £90 per month. See wattbike.com, wattbike.com for details.
Hey Whitey, I heard you have some trouble with pronouncing my name. It's Greg
Van Avermaet. Van Avermaet. Van Avermaet.
Van Avermaet.
Oh, no, not you as well. I've had François humming that in my ear all afternoon.
It's in my head.
Well,
it's
yeah.
in my head now.
Yeah.
It's a social media sensation of the tour, isn't
Those
it?
not familiar, yeah. I think, did this start with the Michelin Scott team putting out a video of Matt White mispronouncing?
Yeah, they were the first to do that, and then CCC took the video again and kind of mounted it differently, inserting Greg Van Avermaet himself.
Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy.
The Muppets and the famous Muppet song.
Yeah.
Mana Mana.
Van Avermaet. And every time I heard his name today
I know,
in the commentary,
I didn't have a steering wheel to grip, but I was mentally gripping the steering wheel every time you did that.
But once again, it deserves so much more than being a YouTube video of the tour.
He's one of your favourites, isn't he, François?
Yeah, he's always been. I've always said, for me, it's been a little bit. Last season hasn't been that great. I mean, it hasn't been his best season. But for the past 2 seasons, there was this match inside between Greg Van Avermaet and Peter Sagan to in the classics and even on some stage races to know who was the best of. And I remember talking to both of them. Quite a few times at the Montreal and Quebec Grand Prix, because they used to be 1 and 2 and 2 and 1, and at the time the list of 1 and 2 between Sagan and Greg Van Avermaet was amazing, but for obvious reasons. I mean, the flashy, exuberant side of Sagan, Greg Van Avermaet was often overlooked, when in my opinion he's been the best rider in the world for 2 or 3 seasons, especially the one when he was Olympic champion. I think in many ways he doesn't get the credit he deserves, and it showed again today by joining this break, which is very difficult for a man like you have your Greg Van Avermaet. How can you get into a break? I mean, as Simon Geschke explains, it did that and came close. I mean, this guy is not supposed to be a climber, and in a hard climb, let's face it, like Lou said, is a long hard climb. He was not far away from Lutsenko, who was, on his day, or Herrada, was a real climber. I'm always impressed by Greg Van Avermaet.
Well, you foreshadowed our audio diarist Simon Geschke there, who we're going to hear from in a moment. But yeah, Van Avermaet is one of the... he does tend to be overlooked. He's not flashy, but I know our Belgian colleagues really enjoy working with Van Avermaet. He is very down-to-earth and very accessible to them. When in Belgium and you reach a certain status, and sometimes you become less accessible.
Speak 3 languages, fluently, and always willing to talk in your language. No, really, I can't think of anything bad to say.
Well, I think Simon Geschke agrees with you, François. Let's hear what one of our audio diarists, the CCC rider, Simon Geschke, had to say about today's stage and his teammate, his captain, Greg Van Avermaet.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm back after a not so exciting day yesterday that just meant today. This morning everyone was fresh and ready to go, and the stage was also, you could say it was definitely a good try for a breakaway to go to the finish, and that's what we also thought. And so in the meeting it was just a pretty clear message. We are not missing it today, and from the beginning on, the attacks were flying, and in the end we had our best card to play actually in the breakaway with Greg. For him, it's never really easy to go in the breakaway because he's such a classy rider. Everyone knows it. Everyone can also spot him very easy because he has the golden helmet, the golden bike as Olympic champion. And so he's always sort of marked. But it was a long fight, also a bit hilly, uphill in the beginning, and he made it. And we were all happy with that also because he had some really strong guys to go with him. And today was a day where he could have win the stage. and even taking the yellow, which I was hoping for a little bit during the stage when the gap kept growing and growing. But yeah, after a while, it got stuck at 6 minutes, and I was already thinking, that is probably not enough if teams go really hard on that first cat climb. But yeah, he put in a good fight, and in the end came home with a 3rd place, which is definitely a very strong result. If you look at his palmares, he's just one of the best riders in the world since years. Always delivers. On the 2nd day already, was close to a stage win, won the sprint just behind the 3 leaders on stage 2 in Nice, and also today he was right up there, and yeah, he's good on so many terrains. He won Paris-Roubaix as well as really as stages with really a lot of altitude meters. So he's not just a pure classic rider. He can also climb very well. He can sprint. So there's not much that he cannot do. And to share a little bit the personal side, away from just looking at his qualities as a rider, also as a person, as a teammate. I have to say I ride with him now for almost 2 years together in the team. And he's such a nice captain, never arrogant. Or, I mean, if you look at all the success he had already in the past years, I think it's easy to lose a bit touch to reality. And but yeah, he's always humble, and just a really nice captain. So I'm really happy to race another Tour de France with him. Next year, probably we will be in different teams again. But I will enjoy the last one with Greg as a leader. And maybe there will be another day where I can be in the break together with him, and we can play a little bit. And hopefully get a stage win for the team. That would be super nice to have one last big success together. But like I said, as a person, he's a super cool guy, and I think there are not many people with his class that are so down to earth like he is. And that's what I really admire.
You say that, François, about Van Avermaet perhaps not getting the credit for his performances. I mean, 4 years ago at the Tour de France, he won the first summit finish at Le Lioran, which is kind of the other side of the Massif Central, isn't it? The northern end of it. And that was it wasn't an alpine pass, but it was still a big climb, and he won it very convincingly. And even 2 years ago, he was hanging around the sort of top 20 very deep into the race. A much better mountain climber than you would think for a rider who we kind of assume as a classic specialist, somebody who's very good on the cobbles, good for Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders. And when you look at the way his career has gone, he was at Predictor Lotto early on, then he had a long spell at BMC Racing, which kind of then morphed into Team CCC, the team he's with now. And, he's on the move next year, going to AG2R, which is an interesting move for him.
It's a real challenge for him, going to a French team. And it's also an interesting challenge for AG2R. Obviously, changing priorities, moving away from the Bardet era into a new... Well, if you look at the signings they've made and the very strong team they're going to put together next season, AG2R and La Mondiale are heading for the classics and no more GC and Greg Van Avermaet in this,
Van Avermaet.
AG2R Citroën there'll be. So he's going from Team CCC to Team 2CV.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very good, Lionel. How do you follow that? Another performance that caught my eye, or our eyes today, Neilson Paulus turned 24 today. It was his birthday. And he was in really good company in that breakaway for such an unproven rider. He rode a really strong Vuelta last year, his first Grand Tour for Jumbo-Visma. think it was a big surprise when it was announced during the Vuelta that he was leaving Jumbo-Visma to join EF Pro Cycling. But we've seen him on the attack twice in this tour, which is unusual, especially in a team with sort of 3 leaders. I've been surprised that he's been allowed to, ride his own race on these 2 days. And today really took his chance well, and not only made it into that really strong break, but rode really well once he was there, and we saw him on the attack.
Yeah, the transfer from Jumbo-Visma, I mean, Jumbo-Visma are not in the habit at the moment of losing talented climbers, are they? But maybe they felt that they couldn't accommodate Paulus when he would have been below Sepp Kuss, for example, in the pecking order. I mean, how many riders of the same kind of ability does one team need, I guess? But Jumbo-Visma's loss is EF Pro Cycling's gain. And when you look at how their opening week has gone so far, Danny Martinez, of course, lost time after the crash on the descent of the Col d'Ez in Nice. Sergio Higuita was not looking A1 today. He was off the back and trying to get back up to the main group of favourites. So, a little question mark about him. Rigoberto Urán is the one that I think is just floating nicely below the radar, and it will be interesting to see, because in the Pyrenean stages, with the descents down to the finish on both days in the Pyrenees, nothing particularly to trouble him there, so he's going to be a factor deep into the end of the second week and the beginning of the third. So, yeah, maybe they feel that Neilson Paulus has got an opportunity. They can give him an opportunity to really find out what he can do in the Tour de France.
There's also a question there with Danny, as you said, with Danny Martinez losing really, let's face it, any chance for the GC. Sergio Higuita obviously proving that he probably won't be a leading GC contender, and Urán has, as you said, been below the radar. But we really can't see him just now, make challenging the real favourites for maybe top 5 placing. Maybe the focus for EF Pro Cycling is now to win stages, and in which case it's quite understandable that they send Paulus up front. And as you said, I mean, if you look at the lineup in a way of this breakaway with Van Avermaet, Boissonnac, and Nicolas Roche, I mean, all these Rada, Lutsenko, experienced, really solid, talented riders, and Paulus with on paper kind of not the same pedigree. Says a lot about the ability.
It really
of
does,
this
because it was not an easy break to get into, and then for it to stay away. Those guys really had to commit, and I was watching the stage when it was the really decisive moment in whether that break stayed away or not, because the teams that missed it, B&B, Movistar, Lotto Soudal, some of them, tried to close it down, and they worked pretty hard, and the gap came down to 8 seconds at one point. Having been hovering around 30 seconds, it came down to 8 seconds, and it looked like they'd been caught. But they just kept going. They kept their heads down. They kept going, and at that moment, it just the bunch, having thought they'd made the junction, as they say, sat up, and they didn't continue the chase. And that last little junction was never made, and the break just went away then. And, the chase happened because it was such a strong break, and they stayed away because they were such a strong collection of riders.
Yeah, it was a bit like running to get on the train just as the doors are closing and the train's about to pull out of the platform, and kind of making it, but then realising you've left your briefcase on the platform. I mean, it was... does that work? Probably not, because you wouldn't leave your briefcase on the platform if you were running for the train.
To catch the train, and then the doors close literally just as you're trying to get into the train, and the train goes away. That's they
more
almost
like
got
it.
them, and then they didn't.
Maybe a quick mention.
That would have been
maybe a quick mention of Team Sunweb, because yesterday they missed it by really nothing, a hair, after leading the great lead up for Kisbol, and today actually Nicolas Roche was the man who started the breakaway. So they're trying hard. They're getting there. Unfortunately for him, Roche couldn't keep up the pace in the last climb. But they need to be. I think in a way, if there was a combative team,
I heard their coach Matt Winston tonight talk about every day they have a plan to try and win the stage, and And, you know, on a lot of the stages so far, I think 4 out of the 6, they've been really close. You know, they've had Mark Hershey, they've had Case Ball, and today Nicholas Roach. Different riders, Tej Benoot as well, we've seen him up the road too. So they deserve a lot of credit for the way that they're racing with the team that they have. Let's see, we put a few questions to Nielsen Paulus. Let's hear from him now, and then his sports director, one of our audio diarists, Tom Southam.
It actually went pretty quick, considering that I think a lot of people had their eyes on the breakaway today, and I think it was just the perfect storm of a lot of strong guys, a group of strong guys making their move pretty early on the first incline after the race started. And as soon as I saw the riders that were going in there, I knew that everyone in there was just a world-class athlete, and we had to be in it. So I was a little bit far behind when I saw them first going, but I mean, I knew that we kind of should be in there because it looked like a group that could go to the line. And so as soon as I saw an opening on the side of the road, I just tried to go across on my own, and luckily there was just enough of the climb to go to where I could bridge across right before it started to go down. And then once everybody was in there, we just started rotating, like just everybody's super hard to make the gap go out. The first hour was about as hard as the last hour was. I mean, just getting into the breakaway is sometimes just as hard as the effort required to win the race. And I mean, today getting in the breakaway was super brutal, but it was also just tactical enough of, you know, following the right wheel and saving just a couple of pedal strokes of energy when you could, so that you could, one, stay in the wheel when after you take your pull, take your turn, and also just kind of thinking of, okay, like it's really hard right now, but if this goes, we also have to think of the end of the race. So at the moment, it was just completely all in to make the breakaway, gain time on the peloton and get away. But then after we were away, it was thinking about the stage. It's like a bit bittersweet, because obviously I'm super happy with like the performance and just being able to race the Tour de France, and at the same time I'm like it was a golden opportunity for a stage win, and I really wanted to do that for the team and myself and everybody who's been supporting me. And yeah, I mean, a win would have been just incredible. Like that would have made the day even better, obviously. But at the end of the day, like, I'm still just so proud of myself for what I was able to do out there. And it just, I just learned a lot about myself and about how to race a breakaway of that caliber. And I think just some of the guys in the breakaway were a bit smarter than I was, and in the end, just a bit stronger. But maybe in the future I can race a bit smarter, and just enjoy it another day in the breakaway, maybe at some point in the future. But no, I mean, I was still racing and attacking at the front of the Tour de France, so it's a great day.
Just back at the hotel, finally, after a day behind Nielsen Paulus in the break, which was a strong performance, a good one, I think, by Nielsen. First Tour de France, there was a lot of people that wanted to be in that breakaway today, and it was only proper bike riders that managed to make their way into it. It was not easy to get into, even though it was the first move that sort of went. And the break rode hard all day, and then on the last climb they were still really moving, actually. So a good, strong, solid day for him. He's a guy who I don't think should be underestimated. I mean, obviously he did 2 years at Visma before he came here, but I think his original intention was to turn pro with this team, but something happened and ended up going to Visma for a couple of years, which we saw as a really strong sort of place to learn, obviously. And kind of one of the standout things I think he did was being in that split in the Vuelta last year in his first Grand Tour when he made it into a few moves that he was policing, and also made it into the big split on the crosswind day. So obviously the kid can ride his bike, which is a major plus, and he's got an engine. And a hard-working guy, applies himself very hard, when you ask him to do something, perhaps a little bit too enthusiastically today on the final climb there. But yeah, good day out for him on his birthday, and he'll learn and keep improving. And on the whole, everything else sort of ticking along. Waiting to see how things develop this weekend, basically.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you very much indeed to Science and Sport. Sorry, François, do you want to do this? Thanks to Science and Sport.
I can't do that because I can't. It's easy, SIS, but I can't remember the motto.
The code.
Yeah,
you can't remember the code.
Every time I know it's simple, but I keep forgetting it.
Can you remember it, Lionel?
Yes, it's SISCP25.
At scienceandsport.com. And fill your boots with all your Science and Sports nutrition products there.
But make sure you don't place your order in the final 20 kilometres of any stage, because you may get a 20-second penalty, as Julian Alaphilippe did yesterday.
Especially if it's delivered by Frank Alaphilippe, Julian Alaphilippe's cousin.
Well, of course, this story broke after the stage, and then the details sort of came out in the wash last night after we'd recorded, and overnight, and again this morning. François, I think L'Equipe had the sort of lowdown on what had actually happened. And I suppose because of the way that Adam Yates took the yellow jersey, we kind of underplayed a little bit the significance of that, so we'll redress the balance a little bit in this part. But on the Alaphilippe story, as L'Equipe understand it, the teams were all warned that the 20-kilometre rule would be enforced properly, and after perhaps some months or years of thinking that, well, if the commissaires are going to relax the rule at the 11th hour, we'll place somebody inside the final 20k just in case, and they got caught out.
That's right. I mean, maybe it's how could I put it? Well, bullshitting from Patrick Lefebvre, but he explained. The explanation he gave, was also a way to prove how professional actually the Connect Quick Step are, because they think of every option, and one of the options is that the 20Ks rule could be lifted because it's very hot and sunny, or the pace is too high, and there are many reasons why the commissaires at the end of the stage, and they do that very often actually, lift the 20Ks rule. So just in case they do, I mean, some real professional teams, have a guy in the last 15Ks to give a last minute product to the to anyone who might need it. And as we saw yesterday, I mean, Julian Alaphilippe was not the only rider to be penalised for doing exactly the same. I think Sepp Kuss was caught, and in the past, as you probably remember, Chris Froome, all guys like me, I remember Miguel Indurain getting penalised for the same thing. So it seems to be an old strategy, tactic to have some, just in case, to try to challenge the 20K rule.
And it was Frank Alaphilippe, Julian's brother, wasn't it, who was in a Deceuninck Quick Step. Sorry, who was in a Deceuninck Quick Step gilet, handing up a bottle. And a lot of people remembered the incident in 2013 when, to try and get around this rule, Chris Froome was kind of suffering the hunger knock, and so his teammate Richie Porte took a feed from the car thinking that he would get the penalty. He then handed it to Chris Froome, and the commissaires took a dim view of that and gave Chris Froome the penalty as well, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. Mm-hmm. You're frowning, Richard?
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to rack my brains, but I think that
because many of our listeners, and many, comments on the social network said, "Oh, but why did didn't he send one of his teammates to collect the stuff and give it back to him? But as you say, in the past, I mean, commissaires are really, I think, when the 20Ks rule is in action, in operation, they keep a very close eye on what
it was also
guys are doing.
Very obviously caught on camera. I remember seeing it, and given what you said about it being a deliberate sort of strategy, a hell of a risk to take when you're in the yellow jersey. But also, as I said last night, a sort of a silly rule. I mean, it's a strange sport that penalises riders for trying to rehydrate. Even I know why it's there.
There is 140 other kilometres in which to get your strategy right.
Yeah.
It's just to stop them doing it in the last 20k. And a couple of people have asked, well, why couldn't they have everyone could just take something from the side of the road in the last 20k. Well, if you've got a stage where the race is on inside the final 20k and you've got effectively another feed zone and everyone's trying to grab a bottle or a gel, I'm not sure that's desirable. And in the mountains, you don't want to... feeding from a car is definitely out, but feeding from the roadside also, it just adds to the chaos of the whole
Remember
thing.
In the old days of Henri Desgranges, they just couldn't get
Henri
fed at all.
Didn't let them drink anything at all.
No,
They weren't allowed dinner.
And they were chasing la canette, as they say, the can, like stopping in bars, to buy drinks. I mean, it was
speaking
ridiculous.
of bottles, we took a legal bottle last night of a beautiful Terre de Mistral, Côte d'Aron wine, a red wine, if I'm not mistaken, François. What was your verdict? I have to say this was our wine of the day in the green jersey collection put together by Divine Cellars, who've put together a few cycling podcast wine collections for this Tour de France. Go to divinecellars.com if you'd like to have a look. Go to the online shop and you'll see all the wines there. But we're drinking a few of them as we go around, and this one is a natural wine, no pesticides or chemicals used, and suitable for vegans. Actually, this wine. What did you think of it, François?
As I said last night, I really love the wines from the region we were in. That's the north of the Côte d'Aron, and this was the appellation of this one was Côte d'Aron. It was very, very good stuff. Once again, very high on alcohol. I had a little not dispute, but this debate with one of our listeners about why producers that tend to raise the alcohol percentage these days. Never mind. In this case, once again, it was 14.5%, which is quite high, but it was very well made. You could taste. I mean, the charm of Côte d'Aron is the grape Shiraz in Australia, and you could. It was really pure and fruity Shiraz in there. Plus, I actually didn't look at the label, but there might have been a little bit of Grenache in there. I think it was mainly Syrah, and it was very well made Côte d'Aron, really good stuff, and without any pesticides or anything. So, go for it.
Good for you. Good for you. That was my verdict too, François. I thought it was very nice.
The details of the various collections of wine curated by Divine Cellars are in the show notes. But just to go back to the bottle story before we move on, in terms of a rider borrowing, like say for example, your teammate's got 3/4 of a bidon left. In the age of COVID, are you allowed to pass that on to another rider?
You're in the same bubble, aren't you? I mean, if it's a teammate.
I guess so.
You can if it's wrapped in plastic, I think.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, as long as you've got a wipe that you can wipe down the... I mean, we're all being very careful, aren't we, Lionel?
We are. I mean, I'm going through, antibacterial wet wipes like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyway, one other thing that struck us today was the fact that Ineos Grenadiers were looking like their old selves a bit more. Was that Jumbo-Visma saying, "Okay, chaps, after you, we've had 2 stage wins in a row. You can do the legwork today," or was it the signs of a little bit more assertion and confidence coming back to the Ineos team? Because Richard Carapaz was up there looking fine today, in contrast to the way he looked on Orsier Merlet a little bit, and perhaps in the earlier days. So they look like they're sort of starting to get into this Tour?
Well, yeah, maybe we didn't realize how much actually Sivakov's crash and our audio diarist Pavel Sivakov's crash affected the setup of Ineos Grenadiers in the first week. Maybe Richard Carapaz had issues as well that we're not aware of, but they looked, as you said, much more themselves today, because if Jumbo-Visma kind of relaxed a bit, and obviously they did today decide not to take part in the race. I mean, they'll be going for it, I think, in the Pyrenees, especially on terrain that Roglic knows very well because he won in La Reims 2 years ago. So maybe they eased a little bit. But you would have expected the Deceuninck quick step to take the reins, or Mitchelton Scott, because of the yellow jersey, and we found ourselves oddly enough in a position with Ineos Grenadier taking up the chase with their future colleague Adam Yates.
Well,
the training behind.
It looked like we were watching the 2021 Tour de France at one point with the whole line up there, and then Adam Yates in yellow at the back of the line. As I said, we didn't really give Adam Yates a huge fanfare yesterday for taking the yellow jersey because of the circumstances.
Didn't give himself a huge fanfare.
Well, no, he didn't, did he? I mean, You said, Richard, that his demeanour on the podium was of a man who didn't look necessarily.
In the press conference, actually, he was very downbeat. Yeah.
But having defended the jersey for a day, it's a legitimate, absolutely a legitimate thing now. And we know he's leaving Mitchelton Scott. We gather that the strategy here is to go for stage wins, but they're in the yellow jersey. Richard, you spoke to Matt White before the Tour de France as well, and his comment about, the question is, how will everyone work for someone they know's leaving at the end of the year? And his comment was, it's just business,
it's business,
mate.
And I think that they have a mutual interest in doing well. Adam Yates wants to do well. The team want him to do well, and they want to do well. So there's a mutual interest there, and that's going to sustain them. I think his demeanour will be different tonight and tomorrow, because he's now not the yellow jersey by default. He's a legitimate yellow jersey wearer. I was just going to say something on Sivakov, because we've been obviously following his progress very, very closely. He's been keeping an audio diary and been really great at sending clips in every night, and I had to remind myself that he was going to be their third rider here, that really the third prong, behind Bernal and Carapaz. So an awful lot in the Ineos Grenadier game plan will have changed as a result of his crashes. And what getting the audio diary in from him every day reminds you of is that crashes are devastating for riders. They don't just crash and then carry on the same rider. It really affects their ability to recover, sleep, and perform. And he keeps telling us how he's not at the same level as he was at Dauphiné. It's all because of his crashes on the first day. And I think we sometimes overlook that. George Bennett had quite a heavy fall that day too, and I don't think he's quite at the level that he wants to be. But these things are hugely significant. And that is, we sent him a message tonight just asking about today, and obviously this show of strength a little bit from his team, and what came through in his response is that he wasn't part of that because he couldn't be part of that. He said, I haven't seen all the work and don't know exactly what's been done by the guys in front, but it sounds like they took over the race all the way in the final. It's just, they're not machines, are they? And if they crash, there are consequences in the days and even weeks to come. And
it's even worse. It's even worse when they crash. Because just because what Sivakov just said, because on top of the suffering, the physical suffering, they also have the impression they're letting the team down, and there's a sense of guilt at times when you crash. So,
Just back to Adam Yates briefly before we wrap up. He's kind of slightly in the shadow of Simon Yates because of Simon Yates's exploits at the Giro and then the Vuelta win, of course. And the kind of the consolation prize, I guess, for Adam Yates since that fourth place in the Tour in 2016, because his Grand Tour results have not been particularly stellar since then. He's kind of moved towards the one-day rider or week-long stage race rider. But it's interesting that he's the one that's going to Ineos Grenadiers and not Simon Yates, because if you think back to when they were both emerging, it was Simon Yates who was taken on by the British Cycling Academy, and Adam Yates who kind of had to find his own way into the pro ranks with help from the Dave Rayner Fund. He went to France to race for a couple of clubs. I think it was one in Troyes and one in Aube, UVCA Aube.
Yeah, that's the same, yeah.
Same, that is in Troyes. Yeah,
that's in Troyes as well.
Club, yeah.
So, Etoupe was the other club, sorry. And so he kind of came in that way, and the two brothers have raced together, and they've all, between the two of them, they've kind of been one amazing all-round rider, haven't
and yet, one of the other things that Matt White said was that when he was talking about it being business, another business decision is to keep Simon and to focus on him, because he said that he's become their talisman, really. He's the guy, it's marginal, and it could change again, because in the first year or so it looked like Adam was the guy destined for great things. Then Simon kind of, they're on a seesaw, and Simon's kind of, the seesaw's tilted in Simon's favour at the moment, and it seems that the team has made a decision. I think their resources are fewer than they were, and they've made a decision to concentrate on Simon.
Talking of coming of age, I think it's a great decision, or at least a very interesting decision by both of them to part ways, to not to be in the same team for the first time in their pro career.
It'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? Imagine if they're in a break together, or
marginal twins.
Well, chaps, let's wrap up for tonight. Kilometre Zero tomorrow is the second instalment of the diarists. We'll hear a bit more from them. We'll hear a lot from Connor Swift, who we've not heard a lot from in the episodes, but he's been sending in loads of really great stuff. His first Tour de France, he's riding alongside Nairo Quintana, of course, at Arkea Samsic. So do tune in for that. Kilometre Zero, sponsored by Zwift. Thank you very much indeed to them. And thank you very much indeed to Lionel.
Thank you, Richard.
And François.
Wow.
Merci.
Wow.
The Cycling Podcast Audio Diaries. Sam Bewley, Michelton Scott.
Hey guys, Sam Bewley here again. Currently sitting in an ice bath, trying to recover the legs after what was a pretty tough day. Obviously, we having a yellow jersey, we had the responsibility to ride the front today and do our best to defend that jersey. Obviously, having the jerseys, like I said yesterday, it's huge for the team, and we wanted to keep that jersey today. So we wanted to make sure that we controlled the start as best we could, so that the breakaway wasn't going to be too big. And it wasn't. It was 8 guys in the end, but 8 very, very strong guys. Obviously, we had guys like Greg Van Avermaet up there, Lutsenko, who won the stage, a number of other really strong guys. For us, having Greg there was sort of the scariest thing, I guess you'd say. He was only 3 minutes down on the general classification, so it was important that we kept the breakaway close enough that we were confident that when the GC teams came at the end, the teams like Ineos and Jumbo-Visma, when they came on the climbs and started to put the pressure down, that the time would come down below 3 minutes. We were happy for the breakaway to win the stage today. There was no problem for us. The main thing was just making sure that Greg finished close enough to the main bunch that we didn't lose the jersey to him. So it meant for a long day in the front for myself, Christel Jensen and Jack Bauer. We spent the better part of 150 or 160k there on the front, chasing down, like I say, a really, really strong group. So certainly wasn't an easy day by any means. But it was a day that we were happy to get through and obviously come out of it with the yellow jersey still. So on to tomorrow now. Interesting stage for sure. Tough start. On paper, it should be a sprint. But also with the start being so tough, could also be a day that favours a breakaway again. So we'll have to have our wits about us again at the start, and then take things from there. And hopefully that'll mean that Adam will be in the yellow jersey again this time tomorrow night. So keep in touch. See ya.